Welcome back to Wire to Run, where our shoes hit the pavement and the dopamine hits just right.
Hey guys, welcome back to Wired to Run. Can you believe we're at episode 11?
Woohoo!
Can you believe we stuck with it for 11 episodes?
Yes, I do believe it because that's how you are.
Yeah, I don't
You got a
know.
lot of stick-to-itiveness.
Stick-to-itiveness.
Yes.
But I also have ADHD and I move on from things a lot. But no, I actually can believe it because I really enjoy this and I love hearing from our listeners. So thank you so much for your emails. It means the world to us. It's something we look forward to when we do this podcast every other week. I wish we could do it every week. Our schedules are insane with the kids, with work, everything else. But we've been loving this so far. We have one more episode for season 1, and then we'll be kicking off season 2. And we've got some really exciting things coming up for season 2 with awesome guests. Yes. So this topic today is pretty interesting. This actually came out of a journal entry that I was writing, and we were talking about this and I just thought, oh, this might be a really good topic for the podcast. A very vulnerable topic. And some of the things I was like, do I want to go there? But it could help some of our Wired to Run family. So I thought, wow, we're going to go there.
Who knows? It could help us as well. So
Yeah, you never know. So
self-discovery on the fly.
yeah. So, I've personally found in this running journey, sometimes the hardest comparison you make isn't to fellow runners, even though we do that a lot. I think everybody does that.
Again, it's not like there's a whole lot of stats to compare. I mean, everything's, time, distance. So
Yeah.
it's kind of comparison's kind of built into it.
Yeah. But really, it's the comparison to the version of yourself you expected to become.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we're calling this week's episode The Runner You Thought You'd Be. We're going to do let's get to know you and what our preconceptions were when we started to run, doing our first races, kind of a Q&A session. What do you think?
Sounds good. Let's get the couch out and
Right. Might be my therapist. Okay. Okay, let's go.
All right. So, who did you think running was going to make you?
I really didn't go into it thinking it was going to make me anything. I didn't really think I was going to stick to it. So I think I signed up for my first 5K. It was like a Susan G. Komen breast cancer race. One of my mom's friends was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I did it in her honor. And I didn't think I could do 3.1 at the time. I was in my 20s, and I never done anything more than like a mile. I was just like, okay, I'm going to do this 5K. And then it wasn't until we had our son and he was a preemie and I decided to do a fundraiser for the March of Dimes, I think it was, for running my first half marathon. And I thought, I'm going to be a one and done half marathoner. And that was it. And that was pretty much who I was going to be in terms of running. I was going to do the half marathon and be done with it. So I didn't really have any kind of hopes or put any kind of anything into it. So how about you?
I don't know. That's a great question. I got into running because I saw you cross the finish line of that first half marathon. So running was always, I think I've said it earlier, running was always how you got in shape for other sports. It was a punishment for
You're going to run the laps because you were talking in gym class.
Right. Absolutely. So running was never something that was really on the horizon. So yeah, running was never something that I really thought I'd ever desire to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then I saw you cross the finish line. You were so just, I don't want to say like emotional because that sounds so
I was
bad,
crying like a baby.
but you were so just like happy tears, and you were just so like, and not only just during the race, but also I saw you during the training and just how you build up to that. And after he seen you cross the finish line, I literally like heard in my head, "Oh crap, now I got to do one." Um, so I blame you,
I know. I know. I'll take the blame. I'm the woman to blame.
but kind of going on that route. Did you think running would make you more confident, more disciplined? Were there any specific goals that you attached
N
to running?
Not until later. Not until really, like, I had training plans, like, I training for, like, the princess races and, like, the challenges and stuff. I did some 10Ks and some half marathons, and I would maybe run to, like, 8 miles, but I didn't really follow any type of training plan. Um, I didn't really stick to anything in particular. But definitely for my first marathon, I was super disciplined. I didn't stray from that training plan at all. Whatever Chris Twiggs, gave me, I followed it to a T and did not stray from that. It demanded so much of me that I really felt, oh gosh, this is what it really feels like to run a marathon, and this is the real deal. Even though I know that I'm a runner all along, it was like blood, sweat, and tears. So, that kind of discipline I'd never felt before. How about you?
Confidence, maybe. I think you have to have a certain level of confidence in order to even try something that is going to be difficult, that is going to be hard. Again, I don't care if it's a 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, ultra. I don't care if it's your first time going to the gym and you're just walking for 5, 15 minutes on the treadmill. Um, you don't play running. Running's hard.
Mhm.
So I think the confidence definitely. Discipline, I don't know, because even when I was training for my races, I probably wasn't as disciplined as I should have been, but then again, I also didn't have a coach, that I had to,
To answer
yeah, that
to?
I had to answer to. I think for me, and we're probably gonna get into this a little bit, deeper as we go along with this. You kinda have, like, that version of yourself that you see at the end of training,
Mhm.
um, or at the end of, like, your running, um, journey. Sometimes it doesn't always line up,
It's
um,
true.
but, uh but, yeah, I think confidence, definitely discipline, not so much, at least not on my side.
As far as confidence, I don't know about that. I had some thoughts about that. I don't think it was really confidence for me. I thought running would heal places in me that it didn't. I thought it would help put me in the driver's seat of things in my life that I could control but didn't. But there are things in my life that it did heal that I didn't expect it to heal. And it helped me kind of release control of things I had desperately been holding on to. I was able to release control of a lot of things. Like I just want to be in the driver's seat all the
Mhm,
time. I like things a certain way and just want to, be, very assertive personality and things like that. I'm just very, if I have a goal, I'm going for it and things like that. And when it's a situation, example, cancer, when I was battling cancer, you don't have any control over that. So there was a lot of time, many times that I was on the trail and I was like, I can't control any of this. And you have to use running as a form of healing to let go of what you can't control and just let it, wash over you and heal you and, release the rain. So it wasn't really confidence. It was like a mix of a lot of different things. It was healing. It was releasing of things. And it was really um, more of that rather than confidence or anything like that.
yeah, it's kinda interesting that you went this way because I wasn't thinking about this till just now, but it's actually kinda interesting, and, we've mentioned before, you've had cancer, so it kinda makes sense that, you like to have control.
Mhm.
But one thing I've noticed with you, especially with your running journey and having a coach, is in a way, it actually kind of and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I kind of feel like it almost releases that control. It's a part of your life that you can almost hand over to someone else and say, "I wanna control all these other factors, but in this, I'm actually gonna hand over control to somebody else." And so it allows you to almost be more free. And then what's actually kinda cool too, and there's so many differences between the way that we approach running, um, and really how we approach life some ways, is you're definitely you're a people person. You've never met a stranger. We were just at Epcot, and, it's like, you know everybody. Um, but, like, when you run, you like to run with people.
Yeah. I like solitude too, though.
Yeah, but you like to run with people. I think sometimes when you run with people, um, you get to be more free. You get to talk to, to that person about things, um or like one of your friends, Stephanie.
Mhm.
When you're running with her, again, it's almost like you can relinquish control because you're in good hands. You know that you've got that safety net. You know you've got someone who's looking out for you that says,
Mhm.
"Hey, you know what?
Just got your
You
back.
you 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 don't have to worry about nutrition. You don't necessarily have to worry about hydration." Um,
She'll hit you in the back with
you
your posture.
it's kinda it's kinda like it's almost like running allows you to kinda
Yeah.
let go,
Mhm.
and it helps you rely on other people because
Mhm.
the people that you have around you, you're able to trust in such a way that you know that they're going to have your best interests at heart.
Mhm.
And so it's actually kinda interesting to think about how it's one of those areas where you are able to let go and
Mhm.
almost be more free and be just you.
It's true. It's true. And I didn't really find any of these things out until I kinda was full swing runner, totally into it, and 14 years into running. It looked a lot different when I started.
Mhm.
Just like running looked a lot different to you, when you started.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to the title of this episode, the runner you thought you'd be, it's didn't look like how it ended up, and I think for our listeners, folks that are just getting started their walking or running journey, or like with Heather Cohen, adaptive athlete that are
Mhm.
push from athletes, you know, um, there or any adaptive athlete, it may look very different in the very beginning. Um, so I kind of just want to preface that your journey may look very different, 2, 5, 10, 15, 30 years in, and to have patience with yourself that your journey is going to fluctuate and change as a runner.
100%.
When progress is slower than expected, what goes through your mind? How does that affect you in terms of the runner you thought you'd be?
Wow. I feel like this episode, there's gonna be a lot of questions where it's gonna be like, long pause, deep thought, or, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just went there." Um, yeah, I think when progress is slower, sometimes it almost makes you question, like, "Am I doing the right thing?" Um, I think too, and it's not really a plug for having a coach, but having a coach can be very important. I don't have a coach. So for me, I think part of it is progress is just going to be slow because I don't have someone there to change things up or to bounce things off of. But I think for me, it gets really tough. And sometimes I'll look back and I know I've signed up for a couple of marathons that I didn't even start.
Mhm.
And I think that devastated me more than any finish time. I think that I don't think I've ever not finished a race. Um, I've gotten close to
I
a
was gonna
couple of
say you've come
times
close.
where it's
I'm
like
proud of you that you pushed through,
where
but
it's like, if there would have been someone that could have been like, just pull me, maybe I would have. But I'm also kind of stubborn that way. I
Mhm.
think, again, it's kind of built into being an endurance athlete. Maybe that's what we should start calling ourselves. Not even just runners, we're endurance athletes. It's hard to describe, but I think, you start to second guess yourself. You start wondering, am I even into this anymore? Or maybe I've hit the ceiling. I can't go any faster. I can't go any further. This is it.
Mm. It's interesting that you go there because I think that's a really great segue into kind of the certain pitfalls that we pull ourselves into, whether we're aware of it or not. I think folks with ADHD tend to do this. We have great imaginations, very innovative. I think that's really important to kind of keep in mind that sometimes virtue is our vice. So although that we're creative and imaginative and, our imagination can run wild, it can get us into trouble. And there's almost always a version of ourselves we quietly imagine running will turn us into, and that can get us into trouble. So let's talk about the fantasy runner version of you, the unexpected. Okay. Like you're talking about, okay, you thought you were going to sign up for all these races. You unexpectedly had to back out of them because maybe the training wasn't there. You didn't have someone pushing you like a coach. You didn't have a training plan. Things come up. You envisioned yourself crossing those finish lines. Maybe you thought you were going to be stronger, faster. You've built this fantasy runner in your head that we're going to live up to. And thinking by now I thought I'd be running this pace, or I thought I would have done this distance by now.
Kind of like Captain. You have that fantasy version of, if you've watched, I forget which Marvel movie it is, but it's like Captain America, running laps, and he's running by Falcon, and like every
Mhm.
lap, it's like on your left, and Falcon's just kind of like, who is this guy? But yeah, you just kind of think, okay, I'm going to be faster, I'm going to be stronger, I'm going to be fit, I'm going to be the man. And then years later, it's like, yeah, I'm still a 6.5 hour um marathoner, or I'm still a 3.5, 4 hour half marathoner.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's even like, I thought I'd have myself figured out by now. It can go kind of deeper, not just a strong runner. I'd be more together person. I'd be more disciplined. I'd have my healthy lifestyle, down. I'd
I'm
be
not
more.
going to eat those Dunkin' Donuts,
I was wondering how long it was going to
Reese
take you to
cups.
bring up the Dunkin' Donuts. Okay. um, More confident person, a more healed person, whatever it may be, whatever you're struggling with, that comparison to that fantasy person that you've kind of conjured up in your head, you've imagined in your head, when we first start running, or even if we start over, we sort of build this picture in our heads of who we think we're going to become, right? And I mean, we've all done that.
Hmm.
I'm sure there are hundreds of thousands of us that have done that, and usually that fantasy version of us is stronger. We're usually leaner, um, and more certain of ourselves than the real life us is. And when you don't become that fantasy runner version of yourself, it can kind of feel like you're behind some, I guess, invisible timeline, like you're running behind um, this invisible timeline that you kind of created for yourself. I mean, I hate to say it,
Yeah.
like it's unfair that you do that to yourself. I've done it to myself.
Hmm.
I know you have.
Yeah.
You really get hard on yourself when you're like, oh, I should be doing this by now, or I should be at, this weight
Mhm.
by now, and I should have built this much muscle. And I've seen you're like, why is my muscle to body fat ratio? You're so hard on yourself. And it's like, oh, like,
Can we kick the scale underneath something so I don't see it in the morning?
yeah. And then you work so hard, and you've got that vision of how you want to look and how you want to feel and how strong you want to be.
Well, it's funny because, you mentioned time. It's so funny because I feel like everything revolves around time, and I think that's probably the most difficult thing is that, um, we're all getting older. We have less time, to accomplish those goals. We have less time to, um
To see your goals through, yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because as you get older, abilities change. You might have kids, you have a job, you might have a, side hustle, you might have your, spouse's running schedule, your kids,
Yeah.
schedule, and,
You have
that's the one
elderly parents that you're taking care of, things like that.
man, that's the one commodity that doesn't renew,
That's true.
and
That's true.
and you never know when that is gonna run out.
It's exactly true. Yeah. So, I mean, that's why I think that it's really important to kind of have reframes ready. And that's something that we'll definitely talk about when we talk about some of these struggles that we have when it comes to the runner you thought you'd be.
Mhm.
Um, I This is where we were talking about journal entries, and I was like, oh, I don't, I may not want to share this story. And you and I went back and forth about, well, do I want to go there because it's kind of personal. Um,
Well, it's easy for me, it's your story, so
I know, and I mean, it could help
yeah.
somebody else. Maybe not. I don't know, but you know, um, I learned pretty quick that it's hard for people to get fit or lose weight during marathon training. I learned that
Mhm.
pretty quick. And I think not being a marathoner, I thought, "Oh, I'm going to lose weight and get healthy and fit running all these miles. I'm going to run 400 miles in a 6-month training cycle for a marathon." And the opposite happened. And it's funny cuz my friends that are marathoners kind of like not laugh, but kinda go like, You're gonna probably gain some weight because you're gonna need to fuel and you're gonna need carbs." And I'll think I said it on one of the previous episodes, one of the first episodes, that I didn't eat very healthy the my very first marathon. I kinda took it as a license to eat, pizza and things like that. Second time around, I did dopey. I ate a lot cleaner, healthier options, when I refueled and things like that. And I didn't gain weight throughout the training cycle. Was able to maintain, but I'm the type of person that's like eat a couple slices of pizza. I'm like, hello, I'm a circle. I just gain weight very easily from that kind of stuff.
Like a donut, it's a circle.
It's a circle. I just don't. I mean, I'm in my 40s, and it's just a little bit harder nowadays. But I just expected. I had built up in my head, and I mean, has a different story, and I'm not speaking on anybody else. I'm so proud of all my friends that are different shapes, sizes, ages, weights, whatever,
Mhm.
that do whatever, running, walking. Personally, for me, I wanted to feel a certain way during training and during the marathon. I wanted to look a certain way. I'm going to be proud of where I was. And I was. It didn't really change how I felt on marathon day, but in my mind, to, I had a vision of what I was expecting, and I didn't meet it, and it was frustrating. And my body felt it too. Um, Throughout that training, it was hard on my knees. And it was rough in the heat in the summer months. Like, it's very humid and hot. And those long miles, 18 miles, 20 miles with extra weight on you. And then you've gained weight during this training cycle. It's rough on your body.
Mhm.
So after the marathon, I made changes, as you know, and I lost about 18 pounds, I think, between the marathon 2025 and then the training for Dopey
Mhm.
2026. And it made my training so much better. and I felt stronger, my knees felt better, I had more energy, I handled dopey so much better, and then now training for the marathon, I'll be starting soon in June, July, um, I've lost more, so I'm down 30 pounds since the marathon 2025. I'll even be faster, stronger, feel better, because I've taken care of my body. But it's not all be superficial, it's not about looks or anything, but I feel better in my own skin. And it's, like I said, really hard in your 40s, to get physically
Yeah.
fit. And it's easy to build stuff up in your head and then not meet it and then get really frustrated with yourself and down on yourself and really beat yourself up. So, do you have a fantasy version of yourself outside of the pace type thing or
And I think we all have like that fantasy version of ourselves. And I think for me, kind of along the same line, for me, my dream's always been to do like an Ironman. Um, and you see kind of like the body shapes, and again,
Mhm,
what's kind of cool, and that one thing I always love about running is you see all shapes and sizes. You see all age groups. It's definitely something that is very inclusive.
mhm,
Um, but when you're watching the Olympics, when you're watching the pros, there's that certain body shape, and there's photographers everywhere.
mhm,
So I think I just kind of visualize myself at that particular body weight, that particular body fat, and I guess what's really frustrating, at least for me, is I know like when you first start, you don't know what you don't know.
mhm.
But I think as I've gotten older and information's out there, and I know the information, I know what I should do, I know what I shouldn't do,
Yeah,
and yet
I don't
I
do
don't
it.
follow it.
Right.
It's like what I know I should do, I don't. What I
Mhm.
know I shouldn't do, I do.
Yep.
And it just gets, and it gets frustrating because you
Mhm,
start thinking, man, if I would have just if I could rewind 10 years ago,
mhm.
knowing what I know now, things would be so much different.
Yeah,
But then other things would change. Um,
yeah.
so I think for me, that's the fantasy version of myself is that stronger, leaner, faster.
Mm.
I can run 100 miler, and it's like, okay, well, maybe not so much,
Yeah,
or at least not now.
yeah, yeah. I think you gotta stay away from the "by now I should've," or, the should, could, would, you know. I should have run for my first 10K by now. I should have signed up for my first race already, but there's fear around that. Somebody's sitting on the couch right now, maybe listening and going, I'd love to do my first 5K, but I'm scared. It's a very real fear for them.
Oh, trust me, the first time I went to an Orange Theory class, I was so nervous, and I'm not and you were even there with me. You had done it before, and just going to my first Orange Theory class, I was like, what's a burpee?" It's like I'm like, I'm so lost,
Mhm.
and so, I mean, the fear is real,
Yeah,
it's very intimidating, doing something new.
right. So for people like that, their fantasy might be being that brave person, logging on and registering for that race and showing up race day, walking into an Orange Theory and going, "You know what? I don't care. I'm gonna do it, and I'm not gonna worry about how I look and I'll get it eventually."
Yeah.
So, you know, distance can also be symbolic for people. We build it up in our minds. I should have done a marathon or I should have done a challenge, and you haven't gone as far as you thought you would. It can feel like your story is smaller than you imagine it would be. And that's really dangerous territory because that's when we have to reframe what our true reality is and why we didn't become this runner we built up in our minds. That gap isn't because you lack desire, it's because life happened.
I agree. I think, a lot of runners, we look at a marathon as like, that is the distance that I become a real runner. That is the ultimate goal, and then the really crazy ones of us look at the ultra marathons. Um, but again, I'm going back to that time, is, sometimes because of life, you almost you have to kind of figure out what is what is the goal? Is the goal, um, trying to become a version of ourselves that we ultimately want to become? Or is it, um, are we doing this for fun?
Mhm,
And, and I'll be honest, after my second marathon where I hurt my knees, I'm a little scared to go back and try a marathon distance. But what I'm trying to do is fall back in love with that half marathon distance, because for some people that's like the perfect distance. It's long enough
mhm.
to be challenging but not
I
overtaxing.
love it, yeah.
I really I wish there was more 10Ks,
Mhm,
because I feel like a lot of these, um, again, I hate to say shorter races, they're so much more fun. And I think sometimes we build things up in our heads because we want to be that ultra,
mhm.
runner type person. Um, but when we look at like our schedules, when we look at commitments,
Yeah, it
um,
requires a lot of us.
it's easier to train for a shorter race,
Mhm.
and they're just as much fun.
Yeah. Injuries happen, other goals jump to the top of the list. Money happens, you have to cancel your racecations because your car breaks down. You're like, "Oh, man, there goes my racecation."
Of course, none of these things ever happen to us.
Work happens, family happens, burnout, fear, all of these things, you start doubting you can do it, and the long miles and the training plan go into uncharted territory, and you kinda, like, freak yourself out, like, I've never gone beyond 14 miles,
Yeah.
Then you start to doubt whether you can do 16 on a warm Florida October day, and then you skip that 16-mile training run, and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta make up that 16 miles," but, like, in 2 weeks, I have 18 miles, and then you skip that one, and then before you know it, that gap gets wider, and then overall, like, being human happen.
Yeah.
We all can relate to that. These are all things that kind of mess with our heads, you know,
Yeah, the
and the
fear
runner we thought we'd be.
Yeah, the fear thing is definitely so true, because I can't, have after doing a couple of half marathons, absolutely, it's like, "Oh my gosh, I am so, like, spent. How am I ever gonna do double this?"
Mhm,
But again, when I signed up for my first half, I remember going to the gym and doing 3 miles, and back then I thought I had to run all 3, and I just remember getting off the treadmill going, "Oh my gosh, there's no way I'm gonna be able to do a half marathon." But you're absolutely right. When you have those training plans and it's like, okay, I've got to do 14 miles, and maybe you get through it, and then it's like, okay, I feel like I barely got through that. Now I've got 15 miles, and and maybe the 14 miles was easier than you thought, but then you did the 15 and it's rougher than you thought, and now you're looking
mhm.
at 16. Um it's kind of like my shark bite half. Um, a couple of weeks prior, I did a training run with you, and it was a half marathon.
Yeah, it went great.
I thought, oh my gosh, this is so easy. This is awesome. Got a little too confident, so I probably didn't, keep up the running regiment that I should have. And then when I got to the actual race, and my body just was like, nope, not today.
Mhm.
And so I'll say that knocks so much confidence out of me.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to recover from the confidence version of that, because that honestly did make me a little fearful of the Space Coast half marathon that's coming up. I'm thinking, at one point I thought a half marathon was something that was something I could do. I knew I could finish within the 4-hour time frame, no problem. But that race kinda spooked me.
yeah,
So if anyone's ever seen, like, the first Top Gun movie, when the MiG freaks out the one pilot, can't think of the character's name, I feel like an awful, Top Gun fan, but the guy almost didn't land back on the carrier because he was so spooked. Um, I think sometimes we can get in our heads that way and I'll be honest, it's got me a little spooked.
Yeah. It affects your identity as a runner.
Yeah.
You're like,
It
"Oh, I thought I was different. I thought I was confident in my abilities," and then you're like, "Oh,
almost makes you wonder, like, am I a runner?
yep,
Um,
I've been there."
so I'm going through that right now.
Mhm. That happened to me with a Cocoa Beach half. It was probably the worst half that I've ever had. It was 4 miles of unpacked sand. I think we had red tide. It was 93 degrees and,
Yeah, that was a hot day.
extenuating circumstances, no shade. I did not bring enough water, but it was really, really hot. I had the worst migraine of my life. I was so sick to my stomach, and I was like, I'm never running again. I should never do this again. I should never do this." And it messed with my head for a while. I didn't wanna do another half marathon ever again, and it does, it spooks you, and it makes you question yourself as a runner, like, "This is not what I expected to happen and who I'd be as a runner." So it kinda all rolls in that the fantasy, the 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 shakeup of a bad race, bad training run, bad training cycle. So anything really could happen to kind of spook you and you start questioning yourself as a walker or runner. The grief isn't sometimes just I'm not where I want to be physically. It could be I'm not I thought I'd be further along mentally by
Mhm,
now.
yeah,
I thought be more secure in who I am. I thought this would have fixed more than it did. Many people get into running to fix things in their lives. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't fix things. Um, so really the fantasy runner version of you is not always about vanity and unrealistic ambition. It's disappointment that, it's not unfolding the way you thought or imagined. Really realizing that the version of yourself you dreamt up so clearly does not fully match the person standing here today. That's frustrating, you know,
yeah, those are some, great points, and I think a lot of us, secretly struggle with that.
for sure.
Kinda continuing on, topic, let's talk about the danger of chasing a ghost. It's not the runner you hope to become, but it's the ghost of the runner that you used to be.
Mm.
Um, and that could be many things. That could be the body that you used to have,
Mhm.
the pace that you used to hold, the strength that you used to have. It's the version of you that felt lighter, faster,
Mhm.
um, maybe runs that felt a little bit more effortless. And that kind of ghost can be hard to make peace with because it was real. It's something that you actually were doing, that you were living in. You were at that place one time in your life. You were that runner once. You can look back, you have the race results, you have the
Mhm.
medals hanging on your medal display, you've
Yes.
got the finisher
Yeah.
photos. You have that physical proof. Um, but it kind of feels like that person isn't there anymore. He or she doesn't exist. It's truly like the ghost of races past.
Like the ghost of Christmas
That's
past,
right.
the ghost of races past. That's funny.
I'm gonna have to make that into a T-shirt.
That's
Uh,
so funny.
uh,
Yeah.
so now, like every
That's
run
so funny.
can really be that comparison between who you are today and who you
Mhm.
used to be.
Yes. That can be painful, comparing yourself to other people, that hurts, Comparing yourself to, like, your younger self, I can see how that hurts more, and we talked about RSD, like, rejection sensitive dysphoria and people with ADHD, and people have that when they compare themselves to others or rejected by others. I could see how comparing yourself to yourself, your former self, your younger self, how that internal RSD could be taken to another level, like with more intensity. So I guess it would be like more like an ache of knowing what your body used to be able to do and what your mind used to believe it could do, or like what you used to believe in accomplishing. Almost like what used to feel possible, but now might feel kind of out of reach. That gap between then and now is like just a giant chasm.
So don't go chasing that ghost, because here's why chasing the old version becomes dangerous. It can make today's runner feel like a disappointment.
It's true. If your runs are being measured against your younger and fitter, leaner, faster self, then I guess your effort today feels like a failure. It starts feeling like you failed yourself even before it begins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know sometimes with me, when I'm thinking about my younger self
Mhm.
or my faster self, or however you want to word it, when I think that way, it kind of makes me think that, today's runner might become tomorrow's spectator.
That's good. Yeah, because you're just gonna take yourself out,
Yeah. It's almost,
disqualify yourself
yeah, it's
from being
almost
a
like,
runner.
yeah, it's like, why am I even trying? I can't match up to what I used to be. Um, what used to take 3 hours is now taking 3.5 hours. It's,
Mhm.
am I making progress?
Yeah. Yeah. Because that comparison. And it's tough because you're still showing up for yourself. You're still working, you're still trying, but I
Mhm.
guess you feel kinda like you're running in place because you're comparing yourself to a much younger you, but you're seeing is what's missing. So instead of honoring what your body can do right now, you're continuing to mourn what it used to do back then. So
Yeah.
and it makes your I guess it makes it feel your current season that you're in right now feel like it's wrong.
Mhm.
So and not every season of running is meant to look the same. I mean, it doesn't for me now. What I was doing, my paces that I was pulling in my early 30s, like I'm not pulling those now. You know, I do races for fun now, though. 3.5, hour marathons at half marathons, not marathons. 3.5, I wish. 3.5 hour half marathons. I'm taking pictures with characters and Disney and stuff like that. I'm PRing and fun. But when I was doing races in my 30s and I was, doing 2:45s and stuff like that, I would love to do those times again. But, I have to be cautious not to compare those times and things like that because then I can make it feel like, the current season I'm in is wrong, because life changes, our bodies change. For women, example, we go through several seasons of change. Our bodies are constantly changing, perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause. Men's bodies change as they age with hormones. Stress changes and our responsibilities, motherhood, um, family caregiving changes, our workload, injury, anything can happen. But if you keep chasing the version of you that is from another season of your life, you can make the present season feel like it's a problem instead of a reality that you have to adapt to, that you need to adapt to continue to be a runner, to be the runner that you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Another danger is it can turn memory into a measuring stick.
Mm.
Um, so instead of looking forward, you're kind of comparing your current season or your current version of yourself to the past version. And that past version kind of becomes that gold standard that you have to live up to.
Oh, that's a good point. So instead of building from where you are right now, you're like trying to force your way back into a body or a chapter of your life that doesn't exist anymore. And I could see how that leads to frustration and maybe even overtraining
Mhm.
and getting an injury.
Yeah.
Um,
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
you know what I'm thinking. I saw you push yourself so hard during that second marathon, and I'm like, you're going too fast. You're going to hurt yourself. And then you're like, I tore both meniscus. Um, that discouragement, and resentment toward your own body because you did have some resentment towards your own body because of that.
Mhm.
But it was kind of your own doing because you were trying to run like that younger self,
Yeah.
and then you paid the price of doing that. It kind of goes back to what I was saying, like,
Get a
oh,
coach.
yeah. Call Chris Twiggs. Galloway Customized Training Program.
And then also can blind you to the strengths that you currently have. Um, maybe you are slower, um, but you're also wiser too. With experience, you gain wisdom, and perhaps you'll learn to listen to your body more.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I run with a lot more gratitude for my body in my 40s. I'm so grateful for what my body does. Like with every step, I'm on the trail or on the road and I'm running. I'm kind of like, oh gosh, I'm so thankful and thank my body for like I could still do this. Like I can't believe I could still do this. So that's a big reframe for me is gratitude that my body can still do this. So rather than getting down on myself that I'm not running sub 10 paces like I did before we had our little one, I'm just grateful that I'm still running. I wish I could do that, but if you would have asked me in my early 30s if I would be running a marathon in my mid 40s, I wouldn't have believed you. I'm very grateful for what my body's allowed me to do, and I wouldn't trade that for any PR in the world. So maybe you have to have more perspective too. Maybe you're mentally stronger, even if you're not physically as fast. Maybe it takes more courage to show up now than it did back then. And if you only value your older version of yourself, you kind of completely miss the depth and strength of the runner that you are today.
Yeah,
So I kind of reevaluate it based on that.
no, that's good. And then also the ghost, um, it, it keeps you in grief without allowing you to grow.
Mm. And there's nothing wrong with, grieving what's changed. I get it. Everybody kind of gets nostalgic for like the olden days or like how it was back then, high school days, college days, or whatever. That's real. It's okay to miss the body you had and the speed and the confidence. But if it becomes a hyperfixation like it does for a lot of people with ADHD, it can keep you stuck. And every run is about trying to get back instead of learning how to move forward. And the pain's not just like, I'm slower now and you're putting along and you're just like getting in your head about it. The deeper pain is I remember what it's like to be her. I remember what she was so capable of. And then you get really upset about it. I miss that version of me. And I don't know how to stop comparing her to me. And it can be really detrimental to your mental health. I think you knew that I struggled with that for a good year or two after we had our little one. And
Yeah.
I every time I would get a memory pop up or I'd start looking through Strava and you're like, don't do it. Don't look back at Strava from last year. And you do not want to look at your paces. You're going to mess with your head. And I did it. And I compared myself and it messed with my head and it made me miserable. But I had to reframe everything and put things in perspective and be grateful that I was still running and be grateful for what my body came through.
And it's funny you talk about like, don't compare. Well, yeah, sometimes it's like, don't compare last week's run to this week's run. Why? Because last week's run was on a treadmill and this week, or actually should be a reverse. This week's run's on a treadmill. Last week was on the trail.
Yeah.
Uh, so I guess the main question now is how do we make this shift?
hmm
Because we don't wanna lie to ourselves. We
Yeah.
we don't wanna we don't wanna pretend like we don't care and none of that matters,
Yeah.
because it really does. We're
Yeah.
we're human. Um, we want to be the best version of ourselves.
You're right. I mean, the goal is to stop asking your current self to prove you're still the same person you were in a different season of life. So, yeah, that danger is if we keep chasing the ghost of our old version of ourselves, we can make the runner we are today feel like you're never enough. And I know that I don't want to live in that space. I know that other people don't want to live in that space. It's such a negative headspace because maybe being strong now looks different and success could look different. How you measure your success looks different. So as I was journaling, as I was journaling this whole mental tug of war last week or the week before, it hit me. Maybe this chapter is asking for a different kind of runner. So this is just kind of literally lifted, and I'm going to read it right from my journal. I have my journal right here. Um, Maybe this chapter is asking for a different kind of runner. So I wrote in my chicken scratch, who knows what exciting goals you might have in your future and incredible. Um, I can't read my handwriting. Who knows what exciting goals
This is true.
I have really bad penmanship. Who knows what exciting goals you might have in your future and the incredible you, I think that word is you, the incredible you that is waiting for you up ahead that you haven't even met yet. Don't you want to meet that person instead of looking in the rearview mirror? Time is going past regardless, and that runner in the rearview mirror is going to get smaller and smaller, and that big, magnificent view of your future running adventures is stretched out wide before you with your future self awaiting you, waiting to show you what you can do. Don't you want to discover that? If you keep chasing an outdated version of yourself, you're going to miss the actual runner you're becoming. You're going to miss this, and you're going to look back on this and metaphorically kick yourself. You can honor the runner you used to be without forcing your current self to live in her shadow.
Wow.
So you don't want to live in the shadow of your former self. You want to be the runner that you are right now in this season. And you have a future self, a future runner that's waiting for you up ahead. That's excited to show you what you can do. You know, I got really emotional while reading that. I'm kidding. I gotta know that like other people struggle with this stuff, you know? Did this a lot right after I had our little one. But as I get older, kind of like I'm getting back to a healthier version of myself. And I know I'm going to want to compare paces now that I'm fitter and healthier. I'm preparing myself to not go there and instead focus on the future. And I think about my 20 something, early 30 something year old self. And I imagine my 40 something year old self at the finish line of the Dopey Challenge ahead, my future self waiting for my 30 something year old self, you know, kind of waving myself on, come on, wait till you see what you can do in your 40s. You're going to cross the finish line of a 48.6-mile challenge. And I know my 30-year-old self would not believe it. I would think that this doesn't get any better, you know, these paces and all things like that. And if I could only see what waited up ahead for me, I wouldn't believe it. I'd be like, this is crazy. So just think what exciting things could lie ahead. This big, beautiful view ahead. Why would I want to look in the rearview mirror of my past? So there's so many other people that are struggling with looking in the past of their past runner self. Look, look ahead. Look at the view in front of you. You got a future runner, your future you that's waiting for you up ahead, ready to show you the adventures that you're about to take on. And he or she is so excited to show you those things that you're about to accomplish. So don't compare yourself to fantasy. Don't compare yourself to the ghost that you've been chasing. You know, look ahead at what's about to unfold before you. So I hope that helps because it really helped me push past through some of the mental barriers that I struggled
Wow. That's woo.
with.
Yeah,
Heavy stuff.
that was wow. Yeah. That was really good. Good night, folks. No, seriously, that's huge because um I'll tell you when I was 20, I never would have thought I'd ever do a marathon. So the next step now is how do we redefine success for this chapter in our lives? And perhaps redefining success is showing up imperfectly, um, rebuilding after a setback or an injury,
Hmm.
um, being consistent in a hard season, a difficult season,
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
learning your body as it is today instead of fighting it. And sometimes it's just staying in the sport without needing to become someone else.
Oh, that's a good one. Staying in the sport without needing to become someone else. Not giving up. You know, I can stop punishing myself for not becoming the exact runner I pictured while still growing from where I really am. Keep in mind, world champs become age groupers. That's a huge thing.
And we have to remember why we got into it, or why we stay in it.
Hmm.
Um, you know,
What's your why?
we I think we all love the challenge, and the challenge changes. I mean, what used to be difficult becomes easy,
Mhm.
and then as we get older, what was easy becomes difficult. And I think that's part of the joy of the sport is overcoming the adversity,
Yeah.
embracing the suck,
Mhm.
and I think sometimes if we just keep that in mind, um, we'll fall back in love with the sport.
And don't do running alone. If you do like to run alone, maybe try to run with friends, join a run club. Like Heather Cohen said on last week's episode, find your tribe. Sometimes all it takes is finding your people, joining the run club with mixed paces and ages. You can learn a lot from young runners and veteran runners that, let's say you're in your 40s, you can learn stuff from people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s.
And not
Um,
just learn stuff, but you become the teacher
yeah.
because
Oh, you become a mentor.
you know the mistakes that you made when you were in your 20s and your 30s, so now you're paying those lessons back
Hmm.
to the younger group, but also getting mentored and being inspired by
Hmm.
the older group because I know we've talked about this. Um, I want to continue doing races in my, you know,
Hmm.
I'm almost at 50s. That's coming up sooner than I think. I wanna continue doing races in, my 60s,
Hmm.
70s, 80s. I
Yeah.
would love to toe the line at
Oh my gosh.
90.
I want to be in my 90s with like my spandex on and with these spring chickens.
I might guarantee to win my age group.
I know. I hope I'm doing that. I want to be running races with my kids, when they're, in their 30s and real lady shuffling along. But follow runners online who represent different bodies and ages and abilities in different seasons of life. You can listen to podcasts where not every host and guest is elite, young, or in peak condition. Have a mix of podcasts that have represent all different, types of runners. And you can make friends with runners who value consistency and joy and not focus on performance. Surround yourself with people who normalize setbacks and adaptation and rebuilding. Pick examples of runners who model longevity, not just speed. I think you had mentioned Dean Karnazes.
Mhm, yeah,
And maybe keep one stretch goal and one grace goal. Give
nice.
yourself grace on a goal and, have yourself a stretch goal to keep growing and pushing yourself. So we've been talking about the runner I thought I'd be, but there's a beautiful flip side to this. We're going to talk about the one I never saw coming. Sometimes the runner you thought you'd be was only the beginning. What you thought once was your ceiling turned out to just be your starting line. And then somewhere along the way, you became more than you ever expected. You thought your story would only go so far. Know that I did with mine, you did with yours. And then little by little, mile by mile, you surpassed the limits you once placed on yourself. So this is where we're going next. The runner I underestimated. So you thought you knew your limits, but you were underestimating what was possible for you. So I'm going to ask our listeners, what have you already done in running that once lived outside the limits you placed on yourself? And think about that. So when you say the runner I thought I'd be, did you ever dream that you'd accomplish some of the things you've already completed? So rather than think about the negative side, what about the positive side? Like talking about you only thought you would do a 10K and maybe you just finished your first ultra. Pretty incredible, right? I thought I'd always be the person starting over. ADHD novelty. Maybe you're that person. I know I struggle with that. I have friends that really struggle with that. Starting over and over on a plan, whether it's an eating plan, whether it's a fitness plan, running plan. I thought I'd admire real runners from a distance, not become one.
Sometimes the, biggest surprise is not becoming your ideal self, but it's realizing that you're capable of much more than you gave yourself credit for. And then also understanding that growth, it didn't happen all at once, um, but it happened slowly enough that you almost missed it.
Mm. Yeah, sometimes the runner you thought you'd be was so small for what you'd actually be capable of becoming. So it was a slow growth.
The goals kept moving because I kept growing. For our listeners, it's basically, what used to feel impossible for you now isn't impossible. And that's because it proves just how far you've already came.
Mm. At first, the dream was just to finish and then run in a challenge or a big race. And then it was to run further. And then it was to believe maybe I can do hard things. That goalpost moving, it's not because you were never satisfied, but because you were becoming more. So take a moment and think about that. Think about times where the goals kept moving because you kept growing. Think about back to when you first started. You first started out, whether you were, running all your life, you were a kid, or whether you were an adult and you started, you're a late onset runner, adult runner. Think about those times where that goalpost kept moving because you were growing.
And of course, my favorite is I surprise myself. How has running grown your life in ways that you never saw coming?
Yeah, I didn't expect running to become this integral in my life or meaningful. It was a lifeline for me in every way. Think about that. In what ways did running become a lifeline for you? How has it surprised you? Let's talk about the runner I never thought I could be. You may already becoming the kind of runner you once admired from a distance. And what kind of runner have you become that you once assumed was for other people? Maybe you never thought you could be a distance runner. Maybe you thought you couldn't run races or be consistent. You never thought you could be a person that others looked up to for encouragement. Your success is not just what you achieve, but who you had to become to get there.
I may not have become the runner I pictured, but I became the runner I thought was impossible.
Mhm. Success, I did not see coming. What progress in your life have you been overlooking because it came in quieter than you expected? So sometimes success looks like signing up for races you used to think were for other people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes it's, being more mentally strong. It could be that you become someone who comes back after setbacks. Um, and, this is me sometimes becoming someone who no longer quits after one bad week.
That's
Uh,
true. It's true.
it's like success isn't always flashy, but it's still real.
Yeah. And some of the most meaningful running success is kind of, you only recognize it when you stop and you kind of look back at it, kind of going up the mountain, you look back at how far you've come. So, and this is really big for me, but the past version of me had no idea. If the old version of you could see you now, what would you leave them in awe of? That I challenge you to think about that. Maybe journal about it, put it in your notes in your phone. Use that because you might need that in a race or a training run or maybe just a confidence booster in an interview or something like that. If the old version of you could see you now, what would you leave them in awe of? What would shock the old you? The older version of you thought a certain goal was the ceiling. That version of you had no idea what was coming, no idea how strong you would be, no idea what type of races you could do and what you'd survive and how much grit you were capable of. That past version of you, never thought to dream that big, had no idea how much farther your story would go. You didn't see that person coming.
And then finally, the runner who kept going.
The little engine that could.
That's right. I think I can. I think I can. This version really emphasizes that perseverance is greater than performance.
Mm,
And sometimes it's the surprise was not the pace. Maybe the surprise was that you just stayed, that you kept coming back, that you kept
mhm.
rebuilding, that you didn't disappear after the setback,
Mhm.
and that you became someone who could endure those hard seasons, those difficult seasons, and still keep that relationship with running despite everything that happened.
That's a good one, that you did not disappear after setbacks, because that is something I think we all do. We get scared. You get a setback, you're not performing as well as you did, you have an injury, you start to doubt yourself. It's so easy to disappear and just be like, not for me. This is too hard. And the biggest surprise may be how much you endured without giving up.
So, to close out this episode and to, as you would like to say, put a nice big bow on it, you know, some things I might want to say to myself is that I may have not have become every version of myself that I imagined, but in some ways I became more than I even knew to hope for. And, you know, the runner that I thought had limits, I busted through those limits and I kept expanding my vision of the runner that I was becoming and I'm still becoming. And then it's crazy to think that somewhere along the way, I stopped chasing what I thought was possible
Mhm.
and started living inside something bigger. Like there was more possibilities out there.
Mhm.
And even though my story didn't really go as I planned, in so many ways, I've actually exceeded that plan or that vision
You
that
exceeded yourself.
yeah,
Yeah. You
without even really
I
knowing about
exceeded
it.
me. Yeah, exactly. So when you step back and you look at the whole picture, maybe this episode is really about holding two truths at once. There might be versions of yourself you still grieve and goals that didn't come to pass and timelines that maybe slipped through your fingers, chapters that didn't look the way you had hoped. That story didn't close out the way you wanted it, but there also may be victories you didn't expect and strength you didn't necessarily plan for and grit, resilience you didn't know you were building. A story in some ways became bigger than you originally imagined. So maybe the point was never to become some perfect, wonderful version of yourself. Maybe the point was to keep showing up long enough to discover what was actually inside of you. So I think that's more important, which is more capacity than you could ever give yourself credit for. You may not have become every version of the runner you once imagined, but you also didn't stay the person you used to be. And I think that's really key. And maybe the invitation now is not to choose one side of the story over the other, but maybe it's to honor both and realize that both have shaped the runner you are today.
Yeah, well said. I think that's a perfect place to end the episode because I love that sentiment of honoring both.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
If you're enjoying Wired to Run, leave us a quick rating or review. It's one of the best ways to support the podcast and help more athletes find the show. And come hang out with us over on Instagram at Wired to Run Pod or on Facebook at Wired to Run Podcast, where we keep the conversation going beyond the episode.
And you could always reach out directly at Lace Up at Wired to Run. We love hearing from you. And don't forget, you've got a song that runs you. Send it our way on Instagram, Facebook, or email. We may feature it in our series, Songs That Run Us. Thanks so much for running with us, friends. Until next time, let's lace up, lock in, let's go the distance. As you all know, we are just here sharing our experiences as ADHD runners. Don't take anything here as medical or mental health advice. Always seek out advice from your own medical and mental health professionals.